When you hear the name Tuskegee Airmen, you probably think of this huge national story of heroism way back in World War II. And you're right, it absolutely is. But what happens when a legacy that big comes home? Well, today we're going to dig into how one of America's most incredible stories of courage has a real living heartbeat right here in Cincinnati.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. The Tuskegee Airmen were America's very first black military pilots. Now, during World War II, they were basically fighting a war on two fronts. You had the enemy overseas, of course, but you also had this deep-seated racial prejudice right here at home. So they weren't just flying planes, they were shattering myths with every single mission they flew.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. I mean, it's one thing to read about history in a book, right? But how does it actually stay alive? How does a legacy of heroes from a world war continue to inspire and make a real impact right where we live? To really get the local story, you've got to understand the national one first. And it all started with something called the Tuskegee Experiment, a program that honestly put these men under a microscope from the very beginning.
See, this was not just another training program. It was literally a test, and a test that was rooted in a really ugly, prejudiced question. The whole attitude in the U.S. military back then was that African Americans just didn't have what it took, the brains, the skills to be successful fighter pilots. The Tuskegee Experiment was designed to prove or disprove that racist idea.
So how did they answer that question? Well, not with words, that's for sure. They answered it with one of the most distinguished combat records you can imagine. We're talking thousands of missions. They earned this legendary nickname, the Black Red-Tail Angels, from the bomber crews they protected so fiercely. They didn't just meet expectations, they completely blew them out of the water.
And that incredible performance in the sky, it had this direct, absolutely massive impact back on the ground. Their undeniable excellence was a huge reason why President Truman finally signed Executive Order 9981, the order that officially desegregated the entire United States military. You see, that national victory was built on the courage of individuals. So now, let's zoom in from that huge national stage to the personal story of a hero from right here in Cincinnati.
Let's talk about John Lear. His path is just amazing. He went from being a student at Withrow High and the University of Cincinnati to the cockpit of a P-51 Mustang. His journey is what connects our local community directly to the skies over a war-torn Europe. 130. Just think about that number for a second. More than 130 missions. Every single one of those was a long, incredibly dangerous flight deep into enemy territory. That number represents such an extraordinary level of courage and commitment to service, all from this young guy from Cincinnati. And you know what? His service didn't just stop when the war ended. No way. He came home and just kept on breaking barriers. First, he became one of Tuskegee's first black flight instructors for multi-engine planes. Then, in the business world, he became the very first black person to pass Ohio's financial and securities license exam. So, Lear's story, it's the perfect bridge to our next chapter. How did he and other local heroes make sure that this incredible legacy wouldn't just be something people read about, but would actually be put to work right here in the Ohio Valley? Okay, so fast forward to 1986, something really incredible happens. John Lear gets together with 4 other men who had lived this history: Charles O. Southern, Dr. Caesar Bassett, John Lindsay, and John Riley. These 5, all documented original Tuskegee Airmen, founded the Greater Cincinnati Chapter of Tuskegee Airmen. Their journey started with that charter and a very clear purpose. And today, well, that original vision has grown into this vibrant organization of over 35 members. It's a mix of veterans and civilians, all of them dedicated to carrying that torch forward. And this really gets to the core of the chapter's mission. It's got 2 parts, right? It's not just about looking backward to honor the past, it's also about looking forward, using that powerful history to actively inspire and invest in the next generation. All right, so how do they actually do that? Let's take a look at how the chapter turns this powerful mission from just words on a page into real action that makes a genuine difference in the community. You know, this powerful quote from the famed educator Mary McLeod Bethune, it just perfectly captures the spirit of the chapter's most important work. It's all about empowerment, and it starts with education. And that commitment really comes to life with the Charles O. Southern Educational Fund.
It's named for one of the chapter's founders, and it provides real financial support. We're talking stipends for college-bound high school students. It's a direct, tangible investment in the next generation of leaders. So their whole effort really rests on these three pillars. It's a really clear, structured, and powerful game plan. Provide money for education, get kids excited about careers in aviation, and stay active in the community to make sure this story is never, ever forgotten. And here's the thing. This story is not over. Not by a long shot. The chapter's membership is open to everybody. Veterans, military personnel, civilians, anyone who shares a passion for keeping this legacy alive and carrying the tradition forward. It's really an open invitation to be a part of history. So we kind of end up back where we started, but now with a totally new perspective, right? The story of the Tuskegee Airmen, and especially their Cincinnati chapter, shows us that a legacy isn't just something to be remembered. It's a force that can be harnessed. And it leaves us with one last thing to think about. What role can each of us play in turning our shared history into real inspiration for a future that has no limits?